Good evening. I hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to Make It Make Sense Part 2. For those who were part of the conversation last week, we are back again today with some amazing folks who represent great organizations, but also do amazing work as advocates, organizers, mentors. I just kind of want to start off by saying this is an extremely important conversation as we are coming into the summer. We've seen these folks lead some amazing efforts across the state and within the city. It's critical for us to have a conversation about what does community safety actually look like, feel like, and having the folks who actually do it on a daily basis be here to kind of give their perspective and share their thoughts. Make It Make Sense is sponsored and led by Pivot for Peace. Pivot for Peace is a project under the Pivot Project with Line for Line. And so just want to shout them out for bringing in you not only experts, but community members to the table to have this conversation. So I want to really kick it off by allowing our panelists to introduce themselves. Please introduce yourself, your role, and your organization.
How y'all doing? My name is Denzel Haynes Robinson. I am the Safe Passage Liaison for Baton Rouge Community.
Good afternoon. My name is Khoury Brown. I'm the high-risk interventionist with the Baton Rouge Community Street Team.
Good evening. My name is Redell Norman. I'm Executive Director of the Resistance, Community Activist, Advocate, and Community Organizer.
Good afternoon. Roderick Jarreau, Wellness Coach and Interventionist in several schools around East Baton Rouge Parish.
My name is Dr. Brown. I'm the CBI supervisor for the city.
All right. And I was about to say, can everybody hear my voice? Okay, so I'm going to let the panelists stay with the mics. I really want to go to our first two panelists. My name is Josie. I go for Joe Short. A lot of my work around community safety started with the Baton Rouge Community Street Team, so I'm happy that they are in this space. Last time when we met, we talked about our amazing violence interrupters with Pivot for Peace. One thing that really came up is how do we begin to bring in young people into these conversations? How do we center young people and their experiences? Khoury and Ms. DeDe, I know you guys are not only with the Baton Rouge Community Street Team, but you participate in Safe Passage, right? Yep. Ms. DeDe, if I'm not mistaken, you run Safe Passage for the street team. And so I want to guide these first two questions. First question to you all is that you both work closely in the school with school age youth. From your perspective, what does Safe Passage look like beyond just walking in the schools or being like this hall monitor? What does it look like for us?
It looked like if you could talk to one of the students and just give them the breakdown while building a relationship with them. A lot of times kids don't want to talk to their parents. So once you give them the breakdown a while and trust you, the things that they're going through, they can come and talk to you about it. Because Passage is about keeping those kids safe at school and off campus. Because a lot of times the things that happens on campus, off campus, they bring it onto campus.
Right.
Once you can stop that by building a relationship with them and they tell you things, that's a great thing to do.
Thank you, Ms. DeDe.
Just to piggyback on what Ms. DeDe said, she covered some great points. What I feel like Safe Passage looks like is more than just being a mentor, being a community activist, being a community member. Some of these children don't have parents at home, or they don't have relationships at home, or they don't have the simple necessities of somebody saying, hey, how you doing today at home? So to me, I would say Safe Passage looks like just an embrace. Yeah, we to do our job at the end of the day, but we also here to kind of put our hands on the kids, kind of listen. She made a great point about, what goes on outside comes back to the school, and sometimes what happens in the school go back to the streets. So it's just like, I would say what it solemnly, holy looks like for us, it's just like a superhero day. You know what I'm saying? You go in, you got somebody to say, but you might not necessarily know who, but you got a job to say somebody. So I say that's kind of what it looks like for us.
Okay, thank you, Khoury. I want to transition to Doc Brown because DeDe and Khoury shared about the Safe Passage program and what that means. We also know during our last conversation, we talked about these systems or institutional barriers for folks being able to access critical resources, especially for our young people. Education came up, but also our criminal justice system came up, right? Specifically when we're talking about how do we hold youth accountable and still be able to provide the resource that they need. And so, Doc, I want to shift to you and ask you this question. We know for many of us who are familiar with Doc Brown has worked in the juvenile justice system supporting youth who are already facing consequences. So from your perspectives, what gaps did you see in the way that systems treated Black boys?
Well, when a kid comes out of the system, they are 2 or 3 grades behind when they get to us. And a lot of those kids, over 90% of those kids are come from single homes. And all those kids was forced to jump off the porch not because they wanted to, but they didn't have a choice. And so when that kid comes to the system, the only thing that kid have heard for the last 12 to 13 years, the voice was his mother's voice. And so when he get into a system where you have a male now giving direction, that like Greek to him. Yeah. Because he never heard that before. And so now as a man, you have to build trust through consistency because he never heard a voice of a male giving in clear directions. And that trust factor gonna take a while. You're gonna meet rebellions, you're gonna meet resistance, but I always tell the guys that walk into the facility that that's your charge right there, to do your very best to break that barrier down. And once you break that barrier down of trust and consistency, that's when you pull back the layers of the onion. That kid that came in that was so aggressive, that just was a facade. That wasn't who he was. And now that kid is embracing you and trusting you and listening to you, and now you can guide him. And one of the things about the system is that they push collective getting the kids a high school diploma. The realistic, that's not going to happen when you come in 3 grades behind. One of the things that I promoted and I still promote today, not being employed in the system, is trades. You know, when you can teach that kid a trade of welding, or barbering, cosmetology, or small engine, horticulture, if you can teach that trade to that kid and get that skill, now when that kid got the system, we can put that kid into employment now. And you can reduce the rescission rates because now I got something tangible, I got a job, and I can make some money. And I'm not a breeding ground for adult correction. That will just housing him without any type of education. Trade is a good thing, and that's one of the things we push. We had kids going to college, BRCC, and technical school, getting degrees and things like that. And when those guys got their degrees and certificates, companies came into the facility, and they got those kids when they left the facility. What's going to happen is we're going to increase our incarceration with young men because they don't have the skills to function when they get out. What you think is going to happen? They're going to adult correction because they're going to go get it. Like they know how. We got to change the process. And all we can do that as men is to show consistency to these kids, right? To these young black boys, and not judge them, but help them, because you cannot help a person by judging them.
So, Doc, and Roderick, I want to ask you the same thing, too, because I know you work with justice-involved youth that are impacted by some of the things that they deal with in community, but also within the system. But, Doc, I think what you are mentioning is critically important because you're also saying, hey, we need resources and services once people transition back out into the community. But there were things that as they were entering, we noticed there were gaps, right? And so one thing we pride ourselves on is that we look at community intervention or community safety, and we look at these strategies, taking a deeper look to identify those root causes. So when folks don't have stable housing, when folks don't have educational resources, when folks are hungry or their pockets are empty, all of those are conditions for harm. I don't want that to be let go as we are transitioning over. I want to ask you the same thing of like, what are you noticing as some of the gaps talking and working with the young people that you do?
Speaking with them, because I used to work in juvenile prison. And if I can relate working in the schools now to that, where he said recidivism, without those outsources and resources, programs that you all have, that we work for, recidivism is going to be high. Their rate is not going to go down. A lot of these kids just need someone to talk to. They need someone that's going to be consistent, as he stated, but that has an understanding. And when you have people that have been through it, that are able to lead them and guide them in certain ways and stay consistent on that path, that can help. You asked the question about the black race, young black youth, how are they treated different? They're treated different. Our color are treated different just by off of birth, right? So you're coming in already behind the 8 ball, but it's what you do, how you maneuver the ball. When they have something they can look at and say, I can do this too, then that can help. He spoke of trade school, and I made a comment that college isn't for everyone. But if you can get a trade and learn a trade, that's a skill that you'll have for the rest of your life. And I think once they see that and they put those type of skills in schools again, recidivism goes down. As a juvenile correctional officer and a former police officer, when I run into kids, teenagers, even adults, it's not just about putting handcuffs on you. It's about having a conversation to turn your life around. Because something can happen just like that and either your life is gone or that split second decision that you made wrong or made right can affect the rest of your life. I like what everyone on this panel and stage is doing in the communities right now. The world isn't perfect. The programs are imperfect. But if we're doing what we say we're gonna do and it's getting done, we don't have to be 100%. We'll take that 60%.
Yeah.
Now let's move that 60% to 75%. And in the hopes of reaching that 90% to 100. To me, it's wonderful.
Thank you. And I'm glad you mentioned about community because I know, if anybody knows Redell has been doing this work before a lot of these programs existed, just really like mobilizing, organizing in community. But before I shift to Redell, you said something important. When we look at the system, right, like the system operates as a machine, right? It does exactly what it's going to do. To be very honest and transparent, it's like we understand that the system is not built for Black and brown folks, let alone Black and brown boys, right? And that's just consistent of these marginalized groups that really are at the highest risk of gun violence or violence in general.
To piggyback off that, I've taught K through 12. I was a teacher besides law enforcement. And I know they start looking at your test scores from the 3rd grade moving up. How about we take that down a grade level? That's the 2nd grade. And they really start when you have to have that understanding. So they're looking at your reading level, your comprehension, how you write, how you can't write, how you add, how you can't add. And they take all of that into account. But this is what I propose to our community. Don't give them that. Meaning at home, don't give them that. And everybody at home is not perfect. Everybody don't have the same situation. That's where we come in to try to change that. And also it's for the resources. When I say at home, I mean teach your child right and wrong if you're able to. Let them know that this is the pipeline that they're trying to set up. But is it really what they're trying to set up? Or are we enabling our kids by not getting on them and staying on them?
Yeah.
See, we got to look in the mirror too and say, it's not just the white man, it's not just the white folks that are bringing our young Black men and young Black women down. Some of us are doing it too. So in order for us to not tear them down the way that we have been tore down, and the help starts at home.
I want to piggyback on how many parents do I have in the room? Raise your hands, right? And I asked this last time because I really want to hound down on what you just mentioned. How many of y'all got a parenting book to teach you how to parent your child when you first had your first kid? How many people receive parenting books? I have a kid, I didn't receive one, right? And the reason why I'm asking this question and nobody raised their hand is because, when we look at the root causes of violence, one thing that we don't talk about is mental health and trauma. So, I always urge people when they say that, it's like, how do we begin to build safety, right? And change the mindset, just not for the young person, but for the families as well, because we all try to do the best job of raising our children the right way. Pick and look at, mental health, we look at vicarious trauma, we look at generational trauma, right? And all of those patterns are passed down. One thing I want to highlight that you mentioned is that if we are really building out community-based strategies, right, we can be able to help that mom figure out, okay, you need housing, right? You need support for your kiddo. She can go and focus on the wellness for her kids, right? We have to begin to create pathways to healing because that's what it's going to take for the young person and their family. Just want to uplift what you're saying as well. So want to pivot away from the justice system and come to you, Redell. You've worked with young people for years, had your own organization, done a lot of amazing work. When we are thinking about you being on the front line advocating for Black and brown boys on the schools, on the streets, and in leadership spaces, what strategies are really working to uplift and protect Black boys in this moment?
To be honest, I think it's a battle of attrition and being consistent and staying with those kids. What I've noticed is 1 year is not enough. 2 years is not enough. You have to be on a consistent basis with these kids and you have to build that relationship. It's going to be ups, it's going to be downs, it's going to be a battle of attrition. They're going to bump their heads. Will you be there to assist them when they do bump their heads? Will you be there to give them that helping hand, to open up your Rolodex, to give them that assistance and those resources that they might need going through those situations? What I notice is we give up too easily on our Black boys. And understandably, a lot of community members are tired. They are tired. But dealing with our young Black boys in this community, I tell a lot of mothers, we don't get sense until we're 30. That's the gist of it these days. Young Black men don't go into maturity till late 20s, early 30s, right? And we have to be conscious of that situation. It takes trial and error for us to really learn. Us as Black men, we have to touch the stove. And in a lot of our situations, by the time we touch that stove, a lot of people have given up on a lot of our Black boys by the time they touch the stove and learn their lesson. Yeah. But I would say it's a battle of attrition and time and just being consistent with these young men. And you have to be everything, the case manager. You have to be high-risk interventionist. You have to be a big hunk. You have to be a father figure. You have to be that person that can help. You play so many roles with helping young individuals in our community that it takes more than a village. It takes a nation. And it's going to take everybody putting hands and boots on the ground to actually make a difference in our community, right? Because I think that the time that has to be put in, a lot of people aren't willing to do that.
Yeah.
And understandably, the community is tired. We're all tired. But you have to push through. It's a battle of attrition. The best thing we can do is give these young men and women time. Unfortunately, in a lot of situations, we don't have that, but we have to afford them that time.
Redell, I want to piggyback off of what you're saying before I pass it back to Khoury and Ms. DeDe. You mentioned you got to be that big uncle, that cousin. Why is it so important? We're talking about strategies that are working. So we know that those strategies are working because it's rooted back in community and is led by people with lived experience. So when you mention being that uncle or that cousin, why is that relatability piece so important with the work that you do?
I would go back to those old quotes, skin folk ain't kin folk all the time, right? And they have to know that you genuinely care about them. They have to put you in the perspective of a blood family member. They have to have that affinity towards you. If they don't trust you, have that innate ability to trust somebody, comfortability is something that we tend to forget when dealing with kids, right? They have to be comfortable with you. If a child or an individual or a client is not comfortable with you, you get no results. You have to be relatable. You have to make it palatable for the community, right? It has to be something they can digest, break down, that they can actually put in front of them and make it make sense, right?
Go ahead, I see you there.
Right, so when you're dealing with these kids and individuals in the community, you have to make it palatable. They have to understand that you are there for them and them, and that you're not talking at them, but you're talking with them. And you have the best interests of them as well as their family, right? When they know that you will break bread off your own table and let them eat as well, I think that carries weight that a lot of people will never understand. From a person that is hungry and sees the struggle within yourself as well, that means a lot to them. And that can only be built over time.
Yeah.
And so that's one of those things that I try to afford our young folks, time and palatability, right? And making it make sense to them.
Thank you, Redell. So, Khoury and Ms. DeDe, I want to come to you, and I want to say what you're mentioning, Redell, is so important because when we talk about community violence intervention, right, it's this big flashy thing that everybody can do and has the credibility to do, but it really takes folks that have lived experience, right? Because we see ourselves in those young people and vice versa. And so you really elevating this need of like, yes, we're sending out folks from the community. They are trained, they are professionals, but they also have their credibility and their lived experience. One thing that came up is really the impact that COVID had on violence, right? So when we're talking about root causes, there is also this environmental justice piece that comes up. When natural disasters happen, people, things are scarce. People, react a certain way. And COVID taught us, in Ms. Dana's words, that we were by ourselves. We was locked in home. And it really showed us that, I was one of those people that's like, I don't got to talk to nobody. COVID showed me I need interaction. I need people to talk to. And we didn't have access to folks in the way that we needed to. We also saw the impact that it had on violence. What you guys are doing in the school is so important because when we talk about community violence intervention, right, we are supporting families once violence happens, right, with being able to provide them resources, but then also being able to prevent further retaliation. But one key thing about CVI is being able to prevent some of the violence that's happening. When we're looking back post-COVID, we're looking at how folks were, when they got back to school, how they were engaging. We're looking at how some of the violence kind of increased at the school. From the work that you guys are doing in the school system, what are some of those early warning signs that you see in young people that something is about to spiral? And then what are your steps to address it?
Some of my first warning signs, like with the youth in the school, that's my favorite part of my job. Dealing with the youth, getting a chance to talk to them and just giving them my lived out experience of where I come from, giving them receipts and then showing them like this is who I am now. The main things that I pay attention to, one of the biggest things is attitude. I had one of my first mentees, the real reason I chimed into him was I kind of saw how he dealt with authority. Was cool around school, you know what I'm saying? Everybody loved him, respectful. But as soon as somebody say, hey, pull them pants up, it's a, you know what I'm saying? That kind of made me chime in. And from that one incident, I learned a little of things, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He was actually the reason how I broke into my social emotional learning because I was seeing like, wait, a lot of these youth really cry out before they do anything. It's like in those moments or those situations, are we paying attention? Or just looking like, all right, they ain't fight, I'm good. So it was instances like that where I would hear an argument or I would hear a joke go on and it was taken too hard. It was a curse word or something through at them. That was a big sign for me. Another sign was, I mean, it's evident. Y'all could look at this, the ankle monitors. That was a big sign for me.
Yeah.
You know, some of the teachers stray away from them type of students. Oh, he got something going on. Not me. I won't. Hey, why you got that on your ankle, bro? What time you got to be in the house? You can't come out? So I would say some of those things. Another one of the biggest, and Miss DeDe, you would go to this like a sign. Love. And it might sound crazy, but sometimes what a child needs the most, they give. Or they show you. Many students come up to me, Yella, what you got going on? What you doing today? And I will always wonder, I don't see you talking to nobody else around the school like this.
Yeah.
I'm kind of put in place to be here for you, but you giving me the love that you want back. So I had to reciprocate and from that, like these brothers said, consistency and trust. That led me down the road. Still to this day in the schools, I'm good just because of one, literally, that I stuck with, made sure when he was having things going on with the teachers, I was tapping in, going to the classes, finding out about the projects. I'm stealing construction paper from Miss DeDe, glue, scissors, you know what I'm saying? But I had to show him, like, I'm here for you. I'm with it. I'm not getting a grade for it. It's for you. But those were some of the things that I would say I would pay attention to. And that's like the biggest signs, just paying attention, opening them eyes. That's the biggest thing. Sometimes we can't hear it, but you always can see it. So I said that was one of the biggest signs I looked at.
For me, it was like baby steps with the girls. I deal with a lot of young ladies, and this one girl, she just was mugged up every day, all day. And I was like, why is she so mad? So one day I had some chips, and I said, you want a bag of chips? She said no. So I took a baby step back. So then the next time I was there, I had some hot. She got that bag. From that day forward, she knew I had something for her. She just had a lot going on. The way they walk, the way they talk, the way they look, those are all signs. You just got to pick up on them and tap into them.
Yeah, Ms. DeDe, this is the spinoff question for you and Khoury, but for you specifically, because a lot of time when we talk about violence prevention, right, it's not to say that we shouldn't be uplifting our Black and brown boys because they are extremely important, but we don't talk about the young women or the ladies as much. How important is it for us to make sure we're talking and having these conversations about some of the challenges young women face?
Young ladies, keep a lot in. They don't like to share. And it's kind of hard to break the boundaries with them. So I would just say, just keep, showing that you care. And once you can get them to see that you care and I'm here for you, I think that'll probably do it.
Okay. And then Khoury, back to you, because I know you mentioned some of the warning signs, right? So if you've identified that young person and they've checked all the boxes for they need some support, what does that look like? What does support look like?
Support, how I would say, do the death. Support, when we see that, it looks excellent. A lot of the guys we got on the team, even the females, trained professionally, the lived experiences. I feel like that's our golden image. I've seen many times where we might have a student that don't want to talk to me, or don't want to talk to Darius, but he'll talk to me, or don't want to talk to me, but he'll talk to Darius. I will always say support looks good because, like these brothers said, consistency and trust. That's our biggest two things, man. We're going to chime in with you Monday. The energy that we gave you Monday, we're going to give you 10 Mondays from now. Yeah. And I feel like that's the real momentum, or that's the real identity that need to stay in place, even with, not even to go back, but even with the females. I had a rare opportunity to work with some females in the school, and I really got to see that, like Miss DeDe said, they hold a lot in. But if y'all in them schools, y'all know, like I know, the girls more aggressive than the boys. It's, you know what I'm saying? Just go back to you and really having a heart and a passion for the children, but not only the children, but the work and the result. My main drive is always, I'm working with you. We might start in January, but in December, if it take that long, I want your win. That's the main thing. I just want you to win. And the last time I say, just provide momentum on how we support it. Just to piggyback off some of y'all said, I was talking to one of the youth at Estroma this morning. He called me and his mama was in the background. So she said, I appreciate you for what you do. And she said, I want to let you know something. You keep doing the work that you're doing, but always remember, when you do good, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But when you do bad, you always got two things to worry about. So it kind of stuck with me. And what she was really getting at was, once we help these youth, we give them that win, it's nothing to worry about. But once something happen and we not consistent, or we not there, or I didn't call your phone today, that's two things you got to worry about. Y'all are going to call me? Am I going to be okay? Am I going to get a different situation? Somebody really trying to warn me? Somebody really care? So that just go back into what we were saying about how we check on the traits, what we paying attention to, and it goes back to the resources, what the support looks like.
And I'm going to shift to Dr. Brown and Roderick for a second, but Khoury, I want to uplift what you're saying, because when we're talking about what does intervention look like, what you just described was strategy though, right? Not just like strategy of the Bush Community Street Team, but like strategy of how do we go in, right? Identify our young people who are the closest to harm. How do we determine who's the best credible messenger, right? With their relationship, their lived experience, and how do we then begin to accompany them and provide them with the resource that they need? And I think you said something that's so key, is that when we look from an evaluation standpoint, are these programs working? Are these strategies working? You hit the nail on the coffin. If we're working with our young people, providing that pathway to healing, then we know we are doing our job, A, but then B, we know we are giving those young people hope. Just for you to be able to say, I know if I did this and we've been working together, then I'm entrusting you, right? I'm putting that leadership ability in you to say, I know you're going to be able to carry that forward. And that's a lot for somebody to believe and to say, I know everything that I poured into you and you poured into me, I know you're about to pull it right back into community and do better, right? Because those words are so key, and what you guys do is so key, because the world is really ugly sometimes. When we're thinking about our young people, some of them may have some of the lived experiences that we do, but developmentally, they are still growing. They're still evolving. So they're still trying to navigate who they are, right? Develop their own personhood. To hear somebody say, I trust you, I see you, I hear you, can take somebody a long way when the world can be so ugly and dark sometimes. Doc and Roderick, I really want to shift to you guys, because Khoury said something that was so key. One of the warning signs was the ankle monitor, right? You guys not only apply trauma-informed approaches to the work that you do, but you've also worked in the system. When we are thinking about the young people that are coming in, what does mentorship look like for them? And how do you begin to build trust with them once they feel like everybody else turned their back on them?
When kid come in the system, we already have attitude. We deal with so much trauma, past trauma. I've never learned how to deal with it because he only acted out when he didn't get his way. Now he's in the system. Now he's been judged all his life. I be in space all the time. I be talking to different people in the community, in the religious background. And black men as a whole, we are too judgmental when it comes to our black boys. As a whole, our black men are too judgmental for our black boys. And that's a problem right there. Because when people look at, I live in a gated community, my kids in this good school here, I don't live in those zip codes right there. I make a good salary, I'm good. I don't care about that. But if you ignore that problem gonna find you. Right. And that's what we need, more people like a Darius or Face or Gibbons or Khoury who doing this work and not ashamed of their past. And what I tell them guys all the time when I talk to them, your past is your testimony. I tell our brother, Mr. Will, who's in the audience right now, you always part our brother in the circle. Your past is your testimony, because when a person sees where you came from and where you at now I got hope. Yeah. And so when a kid comes into the system, I always tell staff, it's not our job to punish. Our job is to support that person and not be concerned about what a person did to come here. Yeah. You know, I never really gave a lot of time in trying to find out what a person did. You know, I have access to it. That wasn't a problem of mine, issue. My problem is I want to get you to a better place so when you get out, you're a better person. And the only way you get that person to trust you is to consistent and continue to show that person care. I told this story many times. I had a kid labeled as one of those dangerous kids that Dr. Hunter ever seen in his life. This guy was a renowned therapist in the country. He looked me in my eyes and told me this is the most dangerous kid that I ever seen in my life. This kid was in the cell block for years. Nobody gave him a chance, you know. I always spent time with my newly kid, you know, that's coming through the ranks, you know. And I said, no, I'm gonna work with this kid. I stepped to my gut feeling. Fast forward, this kid out right now in California making $6 figures a year. And he told me, you gave me a chance. You gave me an opportunity. Because everybody on this stage right here, everybody in the audience, okay, how successful you think you are right now, you didn't get it by yourself. Somebody opened that door for you. And you walked in. Yeah. And we have to give our kids the same opportunity, despite what they did. Show them what they can become. And we as Black men as a whole, we don't do a good job of doing that. I have these conversations with a lot of people, and I get to challenge the process, challenge the conversation. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because I can stand up when I'm speaking and I believe what I'm saying. You cannot help a person by judging the person. You know, you looking at a person, you got track marks, the person got pants hanging off it, he's dirty. If you that concerned, go see, do you have any clothes? Go see, do you need some help? If you're that concerned right there, you know, but we want to talk about the problem, you know. You should never look down on a brother unless you're reaching out and picking him up. You know, because if you just keep living, our turn gonna come. It may not come like that, but you're gonna need somebody one day. And I say to the brothers, I say to the kids that come in the system, you have to show them love. So a lot of our kids have never been embraced by a man. A lot of these kids have never been said nothing positive about a man. Their mother's voice is the only thing they heard. And sometimes, you know, it is what it is. Our mothers shape our boys' minds to not like men sometimes. I talk about the father. And so that kid can get to the facility, he'll never understand. But I tell him, I'm your daddy now. You understand me? And I'm not gonna ship you nowhere. I'm gonna deal with the problem. And when you show a kid that right there, trust me, it's a beautiful thing if you can stay the course, like Brother Redell say, you can stay the course, be consistent, continue to show that love. And when you see that kid come from a behavior kid, fighting, into all kind of stuff, and now this kid right here is doing his thing, your purpose is met. Because we need more brothers like this.
So Doc and Roger, I'm gonna come to you next with the same question. I think the overarching theme that I'm really hearing you drive home for us is you have to be consistent with working with young people. Dr. Greg is not in here, but anybody who is old school street team days used to say you can smell poop before you see it.
Yes.
And like our young people all the time, right? But I think this larger thing is like, we talking about trauma, right? Even generational trauma, we are telling our young people that they need to do X, Y, and Z without giving them the resources. I don't know how many people do construction in here, but that's just like saying I want you to build the house, no instructions, no tools. And you never built the house before, right? And so as we are holding our young people to these high standards, we're also not meeting them with the resource at the highest level as well. And I think something that you said was so key, because when we talk about community safety or violence intervention, right, it's also these narratives that we're pushing out is that we want to reimagine what safety look like. But I think this bigger narrative is like, how do we begin to talk about our young people that also mirrors hope and resilience? Because if young people are experiencing what they're experiencing, and then they have to hear the world shouting out all these harmful and negative narratives, what does that do to a young person? And so I also want to uplift, like, there's some narrative change and shifting that has to happen, not just how we talk about our young people, but how we talk about marginalized communities. And so it begs the question of saying, like, why did you do something to what happened to you? And how do I provide you with the resources that you need?
One thing, you're talking mental health last month, but mental health month. And like we said, our brothers in the circle, when we discussed that, our kids, how many of you got sons up here? How many of you heard this thing, boys don't cry? Boys be tough. You don't be that consistent. You deal with your problem.
Yeah.
Don't talk about what's going in this house. You deal with it in here. Now that kid grow up and was told to deal with something that he couldn't deal with because his daddy got unresolved trauma, or his mother, that he didn't deal with. Yeah. So now you got all that trauma right there. And that kid go out here in the streets and he do some things. And why the kid did this right here? That kid, man, he should have did that. But guess what? That kid had some stuff going on that he never dealt with right there. See, that when the other is when our counterparts, when they go do stuff, it's mental health. Mm-hmm. But when our kids go do stuff, it's behavior. Mm-hmm. But see, the thing about it, we have to talk to our kids, our boys, man. It's okay to open up. Let's talk about this right here. Because if you don't deal with the trauma gonna deal with you. You have to deal with that trauma. We gotta teach the parents. One of the things when this program, Safe Hope Health, was birthed 5 years ago, that's one of the things that I did, is to work with the kids in the school and the parents. You can't serve as a kid and send the kid to the same dirty house. We gotta clean the house up first. And then when the kid go back home, the mom and the dad, and they talking the same language to the kid. And so that's what we have to do. We have to embrace the families and the kids in our schools, because at the end of the day, our kids are dealing with so much trauma. And we already know when you go to a therapist, when you go to a hospital, the only thing they're giving our kids is medication. Let's keep that on medication. They think medication gonna fix everything. Some parents get medication to get a check, but in most part, they put medication in our kids. And our kids don't need medication. We got a belt. When we was growing up, you can't be white, we got a belt. So they put their medication. That kid is a labor through the system. Now that kid can't compete with the other kids now because you know why? He's labor now. So we got to do a better job, with mental health and just talking to our kids and making that time for our kids. Parents have to create us time to talk to your kids. How busy you are at work, I don't care if you work 12 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, what kind of job you got, it does not matter. If you got to tell your kids, like my fiance said, what you gonna tell our kids when you got all the work, give me an hour. Then we're gonna talk. Give me an hour. So if you got to do that right there. Now give that kid that attention right there, not on social media, not looking at television. Give that kid that space to talk to you. Because if you don't allow that time, he's gonna talk to the streets, and the streets gonna give the answer that you don't want to hear. Because now the streets showing them love. You have to create that time. As parents, a lot of times, we think money raised our kids. We think a nice house raised our kids. We got to create time. You know what? Give me an hour now. What happened, son? What happened, daughter? Let's have a conversation. No matter what that kid tells you, be able to handle that and deal with that. If the kid comes to you using drugs, be appreciative that he told you. And he ain't told the streets. I asked the brother in the brotherhood circle, he asked the question to his son. I asked him, was you ready for the response if he would have told you this? Meaning that don't belittle them when they tell you something that you don't agree with.
Yep.
Because they'll never tell you that again. They're going to talk to the streets.
Thank you, Doc. So, Roger, I'm coming with you with the same question. I think you've seen it, as you mentioned in the introduction. You've worked in the juvenile justice system, but you're also previous law enforcement, right? And what does mentorship look like inside of the system, and how do you build trust with a young person who feel like I'm just forgotten, like everybody done gave up on me, gave hope?
What it looks like to me is you grab hope. Meaning, I'm going to use law enforcement as an example. On the law enforcement side, when I say you grab hold, if I'm just patrolling the streets and I see it could be 1, 2, 3 kids on the sidewalk just walking or whatever, one of them might be smoking, but they ain't see it. I see that you smoking, and I stop. Immediately when I stop, their first impression is either I'm about to try to run, I'm about to throw this down, or he about to fool with me. Like I said earlier, everything is not all about putting you in handcuffs. It's about teaching you a lesson. And I've been through those stages before as a police officer. So my approach to that is, I'm about to take this blunt from you. I'm gonna crush it in your face, put it on the ground, and I'm gonna tell you, look, this your past right here today. The next time I see you, I wanna see you doing something productive. I wanna see you doing something good with yourself. Where you live at? They might tell me where you stay. I'm gonna pass by that. May have a basketball goal in the yard or anything. I'm gonna get out my unit and shoot basketball, because that's what I like to do. By them being young teenage boys, I'm quite sure they like to play basketball or football too. So it's not always about when they see that person in that uniform that it's a bad thing. You turn that bad impression into a good impression. Now I'm gonna jump over to the school side. Just walking into Glen Oaks, walking into Scotlandville, canvassing the campus. She would tell you, I'm not gonna lie. When I saw her at Scotlandville, when you said just as well as males, females too, right? You can talk to everybody. Once you talk to them and you see what's going on, let them know that it's gonna be all right. Everything is not always meant to stay bad. And so I try to use that analogy when I'm in the schools. If I see someone with ankle monitor on, I'm about to stop and talk to you. What's going on, man? Who got you with that on? Myself and Roy going to court cases. We go to juvenile court all the time, every week. Sometimes 3 days out the week, we at juvenile court. It may not be someone that's a client of ours, but something will lead you to have a conversation with that person. I just was telling Redell and Daron about when I met yesterday.
Yeah.
That we need to grab hold of him. He made a mistake. Could have been peer pressure. But when I had that conversation with him, he immediately said, oh, it's someone that I can talk to? A lot of times they don't know. The teenagers don't know that it's okay to talk out. It's okay to speak with someone. And when they do that, they trust you. Once they get that trust from you, now you being a good mentor. Now it means something, because now that mentee is going to follow the right path. That's your job as a mentor, to make sure that they stay on the right path. Not everybody, we going to have bumps in the road. But when they do, like, you got to stand firm with how you mentoring them. Look back at yourself and say, what did I say wrong? What did I do wrong? But don't harp on it. Guess what? You're not letting me down. You're letting yourself down. And so that are some of the things that we tell the kids when we go into the schools and talk to them. Don't let yourself down. And I think that's what's more important. When it comes to parents in the home, a lot of homes are not ideal situations. A lot of kids don't have something to eat. A lot of kids want to be involved in extracurricular activities at school, but they can't because they don't have a ride to get there, or they got to go home and watch their little brother.
They can't afford it.
You know, and I feel like in those situations, there's some things that we can start to try to do a programs. We can start to have to do fundraisers to try to help some of these kids, because a lot of kids, if they had something to do, they'll be doing it. They won't be getting in trouble because now they got something to look forward to. We have to find a way to keep these kids, especially this summer. I heard a police officer say at one of the schools, they took XYZ away from us, and this is the time of year where crime is about to get bad. So we go back to one of the questions you asked earlier. The stigma on the young generation is this summer is going to be a bad summer because they were having fights in schools, or fight away from the school, or shootings happening, right? And when we know that our community is being looked at like that, who are we to not try to change that narrative? That's what mentorship looks like. Whether it's in the school or in the community, on the streets, we have to find a way to change the narrative of how we are being viewed. And when I say we, because guess what? We're grown men and grown women. We the same color, right? Whether you have a bachelor's, master's, or a doctorate degree, it only takes one move, and you could be labeled as the same thing that they're looking down upon. So that's how you view.
Yeah. No, I appreciate what you and Doc Brown just shared. And Redell, I want to come to you because we're talking about empowering youth. We're talking about our young people. I wish some of the stories I've heard from our young people, from family members, could have had y'all in the system when they were going through it, right? We understand that everybody doesn't operate like y'all within the system. We wish people took trauma-informed approaches, whether you were in the juvenile justice system or saying, I'm gonna check up on you, shoot hoops at the basketball court with you, or come to your house and check up on you. But we know the reality is that sometimes it doesn't always end that well. And I'm not saying for everybody, but all officers, all public safety officials are not the same, right? And so what I want to come to you and ask is, like, as we were talking about empowering youth, how do we begin to hold institutions accountable? And what is the balance between nurturing our young boys and pushing systems to change?
When you're dealing with institutional problems, when it comes to the medical complex, the educational complex, as well as the prison complex, we have to push policy. That's going to be the main thing we have to do in this day and age. We have to go down to Capitol Hill, right? We have to be at the state capitol. We have to know what's going on as far as what the laws that they push, what the bills that are being passed out, right? What the Senate and the House is talking about on a regular basis. A lot of people don't know that you can actually go down to the state capitol. It's free.
Yes.
You can walk in there and see what's going on with your legislation and see what's going on with the House and the Senate, right? This is a free service. It's your civic duty. This is your civic honor that you have, that you can actually go down to the state capitol and see what's going on. This is affecting your everyday lifestyle. Policy. Once us as Black and brown people get together and we understand that pushing policy is going to get us out of the problematic problems that we're having, I think that would be something that would open our eyes to bigger solutions. We don't even understand policy and how laws are passed in the state, right? We don't understand that, House, Senate, state legislature, state House. We're not even understanding that it's a U.S. House and a U.S. Senate, right? It's different levels to this. We're talking about the state level, the national level, and the local level. We need to understand how policy is being pushed and made in our city. What I like to do with a lot of our young males and females is get them knowledgeable and have them with the tools. A lot of our kids don't have access to the Social Security card. A lot of our kids don't have access to a birth certificate. A lot of kids don't have access to their medical records, nor their Medicaid or Medicare papers, or know who their primary physician is, right? They didn't tell you any of this information. I deal with a lot of youth, and we try to get them prepared for the future, and we tell them, hey, let's go fill out this application, and a job, we've been successful a lot of times. I do job placement, and the job, I give them a W-9, and they look at me, Mr. Norman, what is that? Something simple as a W-9, filling out, knowing your social security number. These are the barriers I try to get my young folks prepared on, because when you're fighting institutional racism, when you're fighting institutional discrimination, you have to have the tools to be prepared to even go about doing that. I can't tell you to be financially successful if you don't have a bank account, and I don't help you get there. I can't tell you to go down and, hey, let's go get a loan, and you don't even know what bank to go to. You don't know about a credit union, Chase, loans or savings. So let's give our kids the tools to be prepared to fight this institutional racism. That's one thing I like to educate the public on, because as much as we want to talk about our youth being uneducated, our average adult don't know about the House of the Senate.
Yep.
Our average adult don't know how to push policy. I know how to complain even if they had a problem.
Yeah.
A lot of our average adults in this city don't know who their local House member is, who their local Senate member is.
Council.
Or let alone the council member, the mayor, or the chief of police, or the sheriff, or the constable. Teaching people that institutional knowledge you need to have to get into that realm of fighting institutional racism or blockades, right? And so that would be one of my things that I would empower my young black males and females to do in this community. Get educated, right? Yeah. And education is power. Showing them how to implement that, right? Implementation, you can have the knowledge, but do you have the dedicated implementation? We always talk about reading, but it's about reading comprehension. We want to teach kids how to comprehend what they read, because I know a lot of kids that can read big words, but they cannot regurgitate what they just processed when they read to you, right? And so same thing when you're talking about institutional knowledge and institutional blockades. We have to get knowledge and teach them how to implement that, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I try to do with my young black males and females in the community, educate them on the institution, right? Because the education on the institute educates you how to be successful in the future.
And I think, Redell, and I'm going to ask my panelists a closing question, but I also think what you're mentioning is outside of this knowledge of what institutional racism is, how are all of these systems entrenched with now institutional racism, white supremacy, authoritarianism, like all of the isms you can think of, sexism, ageism, right? Like all of these things. Right. But I think to take it up a notch, when we are talking about the strategies that you guys are doing, we understand that we saw it a couple of weeks ago towards the end of April, that funding got cut for CVI, right? There's always this question, as I've been working around the state, is like, what lessons can we take from Baton Rouge and vice versa? Baton Rouge really over the last couple of years have dedicated and invested into this work heavily, right? Through initiatives, through grants, through projects. And, you know, there's always this question when we talk about policy is like, how do we begin to sustain the work? Because government changes, and when government changes, priorities change. And that's just how it works. And so when you're talking about us really getting familiar about the legislative process and like who's in office, right? Who should we vote for? What are their priorities? That also determines the fate of these strategies and these solutions. And, you know, one thing that is always interesting is that, you know, Louisiana has more parishes than California. Right. And they use it different. We say parishes. There are 64 parishes in the state of Louisiana. Right. And they're the top three major cities in our state is Shreveport, if I'm not mistaken, New Orleans, and Baton Rouge. Right. They're not even representative of how much they're not even representative of what the actual Louisiana looks like. Very rural, very small, very conservative. Right. And so I want to uplift what you're saying, because it's like, yeah, we can do this all day. We can talk about empowering our youth. But if we're not giving dedicated resources, if we're not engaging in advocacy strategies and organizing strategies, we're going to find ourselves keep starting these programs, then we're going to go back and keep starting these programs, and then we're going to go back again. So I want to elevate that too. This advocacy, these legislative priorities are important because our young people need these programs. So my closing question is, what's one thing you want everyone in this room, educators, parents, advocates, or peers, to walk away remembering about how we keep our youth safe and thriving?
I've been working on this, and I'm going to be pushing this in Baton Rouge. We about to come up with a Baton Rouge agenda, right? Us as a people, black just in general, we don't have an agenda. We talk about Trump with their agendas, but they got it on paper. Yeah. It's wrote down, it's a playbook, and they gave it to you already. Us as a people, we need to come up with an agenda and stick to it, something tangible, palatable. And when we're talking about an agenda, we need to be mindful. We need to have understanding and overstanding. Hindsight and foresight. We need more Indians than chiefs. We need to get to the point where we can put leadership in place, and let's not fight with leadership. Let's follow protocols and procedures. Let's have one agenda, one band, one sound. As a collective, us as people, we need an agenda. Not only do we need a Baton Rouge agenda, we need a Louisiana agenda. We need a Black agenda for Black Americans, period. We are not out-organized. We fight with each other too much. Just a simple fact of it. If we can get organized, come up with an agenda, I think that coming away from meetings like this, because we always say we tired of having meetings about meetings about meetings about meetings. Let's put something down on paper, tangible, and have an agenda so we can go to war.
Yeah. Thank you, Redell. Of course.
I just want to put this, it's like, how many people in this room do CVI work? That's the one thing I want everybody in this room to know. Reach out, connect with some of these people, get numbers. If y'all know anybody that may need the help, let's just spread that. Strengthen numbers, that always been my thing, which correlate with your agenda. We get that strength, we gonna be good. There's a lot of people in this room that do CVI work, that care about the community. Even if y'all got questions, you heard something that came up, tap in with us, because I feel when I know something that you don't know and I can tell you versus you know something that I don't know and you can tell me. So that's what I wanted to do. If y'all can, when we leaving, tap in with somebody. Give them a hug, give them some love, give them a number so you can have somebody or a point of contact when you do run into someone, you do run into somebody that needs some type of help or just some type of love. You can reach out and say, hey, I know where to go with that. And we can spread that love accordingly.
Thank you. Anybody else want to give?
Closing remarks.
I want to leave this meeting with mental health is real. It's not something to be ashamed of if you are facing challenges. Because many people in this country that are very successful, and every day they're taking medication just to keep from hurting themselves or somebody else. Don't feel that you're less than a person. You have to sit on a couch and share your most vulnerable self. If that's what will make you whole, you do it. That makes you a strong person, recognizing your weakness. Because we all have weakness, we all have strength. And no one is strong in everything. And I always tell people, if your chest hurt long enough, you go into the doctor for cardiology. If you're sick long enough, you go into a doctor. But our brain is one of the most important muscles in our body. But we're going through a lot of things, but we won't get it checked. Because now people think we're crazy. People think that we're weak. But you go to the doctor for everything else. But you will not check on your mental health. Mental health is very, very important. Men commit suicide 4 times higher than females. Over 80% of suicide is males. And you wonder why? Because we are told to keep everything to ourselves and deal with your situation, and we don't share with anyone. Hurt people hurt other people. And so we have to understand that. And I just want to piggyback on Brother Redell said, we have to understand our power of voting. We can talk about people in office right now until as a Black people, we educate ourselves about voting. Too many people died and got fire hose and dogs and head busted and put in jail and burned, thrown in the river with cement blocks for our civic duty. We need to educate people, adults, the importance of voting. When our kids, the school is not gonna do this right here. We got mentors, we got a voice, we got a platform. We have to educate our kids when they junior, sophomores in high school about voting. I'm not telling you what party to vote for. Educate them about voting. Voting your vote have consequences. When you don't vote, you have consequences. And you just look around what's going on right now in our country. our vote have consequences when you don't vote, or you're not educated, informed on where you should place your vote. And please get that out of your mind that your vote don't count. That's about the ignorant thing I hear black people say. And I hear it all the time. No, we have had elections decided by 5 and 10 votes. We have to do a better job. What he's saying, what he wants, will never happen. We have to educate our kids and our adults the power of our vote.
All right. Well, I think that brings us to a close. Feel free if you want to grab a panelist after to ask them any burning questions you may have. We are happy that you came here to make it make sense. Can we agree that our panelists made it make sense? With that being said, just want to say thank you all. Hope you have a great night. If you want to follow up more on events and conversations and strategies like this, please look at Pivot for Peace on social media. We also have the Baton Rouge Community Street Team as well. Please follow both of those amazing organizations on social media. We appreciate the hard work. Thank y'all so much for coming out.